What's up, marketing legends, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm producer Liza from X-Growth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So wherever you are, get comfy and enjoy the show.
Hi everyone, I'm Vinnie, and we're back for another episode of Growth Colony, where we talk to B2B marketers about their paths, focusing on success, but uncovering where things haven't always gone right, so you can make better, more informed decisions on your own journey. Today's a bit of a special one, as we're joined by Thomas Barta, Leadership Dean of the Marketing Academy CMO Fellowship, and an Honorary Fellow of the Marketing Society. A regular contributor to Forbes and Marketing Week, Thomas is an author, lecturer, and managing director of the Marketing Leadership Institute. He also founded the Marketing Leadership Masterclass, where he delivers his thinking to top universities and companies like Adobe, Cisco, and Google. A former CMO, McKinsey partner, and organisational psychologist, Thomas is a global authority on marketing leadership. His research includes the largest study on marketing success, north of 68,000 assessments. He's also the author of The 12 Powers of a Marketing Leader, a highly acclaimed leadership book for marketers, one I have read and couldn't put down. Thomas, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you?
I'm very well, especially after your enthusiastic introduction. I'm doing my best to deliver now. Thank you.
Did I get everything right?
Yeah, of course you did.
Excellent.
Makes me feel old, but you did a good job summarizing.
Yeah, well, I suppose you can't have a list that long if you're not a little bit older.
That's it.
That's it, right? Try to put that very diplomatically.
But marketing
Thomas,
keeps you young, so I'm happy. All good.
Say that again, sorry?
Marketing keeps you young, so no problem.
That's true. That's true. Well, in my case, I sure hope so. Thomas, thanks so much for coming on. We've caught up a few times ahead of this and thoroughly enjoy talking to you each and every time. And what excites me the most is the ability to be able to have this conversation in front of all of our listeners. And I know that in the short space of time that I've known you, I've learned a hell of a lot. And so hopefully we can pass some of that on to the many marketers that listen to us. Let's talk about AI as a distraction. Is AI just noise for companies right now?
Well, if I look into my spam inbox, I'd say there is a noise element. And definitely right now, everybody who has an agency or a product or anything in a marketing space is leveraging, quote unquote, AI either for promotion or in the real world. So it's big. I think it's going to be a game changer for many things we do in marketing, in particular, figuring out returns. We'll come to that. So it's not quite, it's a mix of distraction. And of course, it's an important topic. Everything that's hot and new, of course, there will be some noise, but it is a big deal and we should look at it.
Well, so it's a big deal, sure. But more specifically for marketers, should marketers master the fundamentals first?
It's hard to say no to that. Of course, absolutely. Because if you are a marketer, the fundamentals of how you attract a customer, design a product, figure out the right price, find out what people need, talk to them, make sure they're coming or buy more or come more often, that's not going to change. I think we still have a lot of space to do that better. And then AI is going to help. The challenge with AI is because it's so noisy right now, we could have happened what happened with digital. When digital was new, everybody was jumping on it. And now what we're seeing, and there was just a quote from the CEO of the American Association of Advertisers that there is billions and billions of overspend in digital simply because people have just focused so much on it that they forgot some other things that matter. This could happen with the AI. So it's quite important for marketers to step back and do what CEOs have to do all the time. We call that zooming. And that means you're going to step back and say, okay, well, where are we? What are we doing? What's important? What are the things that we're really working on? And then once you figure that out, you can happily dive into one or two AI tools and then go deep and see how they work. And then you have to go back and say, does it still make sense? So that ability to zoom in and out That's quite important, and it will become more important for marketers the more tools like AI will arrive.
So zooming is an interesting one, and I think we've got some space to go into that specifically later on. But zooming being presumably one of the fundamentals, because my question was, should marketers focus on the fundamentals first? And where we ended up was, thinking more like a CEO, which is what CEOs do, which is zooming in and out. That's one of the fundamentals then. So list off for me, what are those fundamentals, so we can dig into a few on this. We've got zooming. Which ones don't go out of style, in your opinion?
I'd say, you can just look at the 4P and they'll all matter. But let me start with something that we neglect a little. I just had a discussion for Nikkei with the president of Asahi, the brewery. And he said, my biggest frustration is that many marketers that's a B2C, which I realized, we'll come back to B2B, is that a lot of my marketers are just looking at data. And what we're missing here is the consumer connection. Who is sitting down with customers and having a debate? How do you do that? How do you stay close? I think that's a fundamental everybody in marketing has to observe. And we see that a lot in B2B, where marketers even say, oh, I'm not allowed to talk to customers. Then, of course, the question is always like, have you tried hard enough? But there is that, and that's the number one. As a marketer, you have to be extremely close to customers. It doesn't mean data is quite useful, but that does not replace a conversation with the people you're marketing or selling to. I think the second one is, of course, and now I'm annoying quite a number of people in B2B here, because the product is huge. Marketing, includes the product. And of course, it is challenging because in business context, the product is sometimes really strongly in focus, because that's the core of what the engineers and everybody is working on. But it is a big deal. The question for B2B marketers, are you close enough to this? Are you deep enough in it? Do you know enough about it? Can you have challenging conversations with the people that are developing these things, which is hard because they believe they're better than you at this. So this is a really tough debate. Pricing, that's going to go out of fashion. People will have to pay a certain price for the product, and that's a huge value lever. I understand that a lot of people who work in marketing don't enjoy pricing that much. We just done a new analysis, and we saw that about 30% of marketers involved. It's a big deal. Yeah, promotion, of course, by nature, that's getting closer. And of course, there is communication, because you need to tell people what product you have, and then you do that in a way that they come and buy. So look, I'm just told you what the 4 Ps are. There's no news in that. That's not going to go away. AI will be a tool that will help you, but these fundamentals will always be the fundamentals, sort of 4P plus meeting with the people you sell to.
Let's say there was the nice little piece in there from the CEO of Asahi, even though it is a B2C example, speaking specifically to B2B marketers, which is the large portion of our audience. Tell me, go into using that, but then also going back to this zooming thing. Sure, we've got our 4 Ps, and that's great. Those are the things that aren't going to go out of style. But what do CEOs actually expect from marketers? What do they really want? And how can B2B marketers cut through to deliver? So
they're very big questions. Thank you for asking those. So what does a CEO want? Well, let's ask CEOs. There was just a new study that a company has done. It's called Boathouse in the US. Some of the few annual reports on what do CEOs want from marketers. And they have the top 5. The top 3 are create more customers, drive sales, growth and market share, grow faster than competition. And there was something on brand and something on differentiation as 4 and 5. That it's extremely simple.
Tell us those again. Tell us those again.
Well, they're all the same. They're just different phrases for growth. But create new customers, drive sales, growth and market share, grow faster than competition. It says literally grows 3 times. And then there was something with differentiation that came way later. The point is, no CEO in the world hires a marketer for some whatever brand things. You hire a marketer because you want to grow the business. That's the only reason why you're there. And you can break down everything a CEO says to marketers into literally many pieces, and then you add them all up and it will say growth. It will actually say profitable growth because there's also cost involved, but that's ultimately it. I don't think that's going to change. And we can shorten that debate. Because I've met a CEO who wants something very different from marketers. There's different ways of getting there, but that's the headline. You ask a very difficult question, which is how do marketers break through in B2B, and in particular in B2B? Now, I'm in Tokyo right now, and one of my good friends, Yuki Yamaguchi, is the CMO of Panasonic Connect, and we just talked about what she's doing, and she has a great example of how she's been able to cut through in a large organization, 30,000 people, engineered, focused, conservative, yada, yada. And what she, for example, it took her time. But what she's, for example, done is she said, if we want to become more customer focused, one of the things I need to do is to get everybody who is involved at the table and have them talk to customers together. Now, think about this. You come in new, you just say, hello, I'm marketing. I'm no longer doing brochures. What I want to do is get all of us together and have customer interviews. Now, that you can imagine that didn't go down too well. But she knew that was difficult. So it took half a year in total to get to a first pilot. They did a pilot. Guess what happened? Of course, it was a huge revelation. Spread like a wildfire. Suddenly, everybody else wanted to do the same. And it's through activities like these that B2B marketers, first off, prove to the rest of the organization we're useful, which not always everybody agrees to initially. Second, it shows that the reason marketing exists is not to do nice brochures, but to help the organization become better, grow more. Which clearly made that case. And there are many examples in B2B. There is another, Mark Phipps at Cisco. When he came in and he had the APAC region as CMO, marketing again, did the brochures and the conferences and events. And he said, that's not, I'm not, we have to, but that's not why I'm here. So he, for example, said, how can we be helpful? So what they did is they built a data model to figure out the likelihood of the different leads that the same sales organization had, the likelihood to churn or buy more, go somewhere else. And they start sharing that data, again and again and again. And suddenly the sales team said, we're going to see more of that. Share us. Suddenly marketing had a seat at the table. It's activities like these where you start to prove the value that you bring through these activities. You have to sometimes prove it. People may not believe it before, that you're part of that growth journey. And that's the job. So if you're not there in a B2B marketing role, if you are doing the brochures, and by the way, brochures are quite important, don't get me wrong. But if that's the core focus, you're quite vulnerable because people can cut the brochure money and you're gone. While instead you could actually do very useful work by helping the company grow faster, getting closer to customers, understanding them better, and so on. That's data everybody wants to see.
So your book, The 12 Powers of a Marketing Leader, one of your books, which I have read, and as mentioned in the intro, I couldn't put it down. One of the key parts of which I think touches every power, but it is spoken about more specifically when talking or trying to mobilize those above you. Essentially, the model that you speak of throughout the book is how to mobilize people above you, to the sides of you, and beneath you, right? And breaking those each into their separate quadrants. The three powers that go into mobilizing those above you, in this case, the CEO, if you are a marketing leader, which does touch every part of every single power, but is around finding that sweet spot, finding how to not only find, but also grow the value creation zone where company goals and customer needs align. Let's just talk about that a little bit. So I'd love for you to share the part of that thinking around how does one find that? How can you leverage? Explain it to us first in a little bit more detail, but then how do you do that? How do you find that value creation zone and then expand upon it? And why is it important?
What does marketing do? There's a ton of definitions, but practically, marketing understands customers very well and helps the company translate that into activities, which depending on the organization, marketing actually leads or contributes to. So there is always the company and there is always the customer. It's never different. There's no company where that doesn't exist. And companies only thrive if they get it right for the customer and also, of course, make profit on the way. So, it's a very simple model. Now, as a marketer, what often happens is that people come into marketing and they think a lot about the customer and they show all the reports and the wonderful things. And perhaps they are not 100% on top of the debate that happens in the C-suite. It happens many times. I was at a large meeting with chief marketing officers from US banks. We had a very good discussion. Marketing in banks isn't always leading. Yeah, it's often a support function. We were talking a lot about customer needs, and I asked everybody, okay, tell me what are the 5 priorities in the C-suite right now? And there was a lot of silence. And what I realized is that many times it does happen a lot that marketers are very good at understanding what customers want, but perhaps slightly less so on top of the debate in the C-suite. That's, by the way, is a research effort, right? It's very simple. As much as you figure out for a customer, you can figure out what's going on there. And when you have a C-suite debate where cash is short, don't come with your branding project. People will think you are mad because you don't. This is completely misplaced. Yeah, so you need to always see what are the trends in both, and that's hard work because tomorrow morning the C-suite has a new thing come up, and all of a sudden what they want is shifting, or customers have a new trend, or AI is coming. So that you need to find the overlap between the two. And the PlayStation, Sony PlayStation is a great example. Nobody wanted this at Sony. People had no interest. Ken Kutaragi, young engineer, he said, you know what, this is important. I'm pushing this through. I'm pushing this. And he convinced the management of 2 things. One, this is what customers really want. And he showed examples and people being excited about playing and the market data and da. But he also convinced the company, we can do this. This is profitable. This is ethically okay, which a lot of people challenged at the time. So he found that value creation zone. That's the board understood, okay, well, that matters. And obviously consumer felt it mattered. Now, this value creation zone, this overlap, this keeps changing all the time. You have a constant job to figure it out. And it's very easy. If you figured it out, this is when you get the money. If you haven't figured it out, that's when people cut your budget, because obviously the C-suite hasn't seen why what you're doing matters. So that's a big idea of the value creation zone. And so your job as a marketer is every single day to look at where are we? Are we in it or not? And this is it's never, this is not one-off. This is it's not a brand positioning project. This is a constant everyday struggle. But that's the core of the work. And again, it's very easy. If you're not in it, that's when they cut budgets. So do they cut your budgets? It's very easy to find out where you are in a V-zone.
Just staying on that topic, just for a little bit longer and digging into it a little bit more, the thing that I found most helpful when reading the book was, you only focus on the big issues. Sure, okay, you've got a branding idea, you've got a branding campaign idea. You're there as a marketer. That's one of the things that you are responsible for doing. You even said the top 3 things that a CEO earlier in this episode, top 3 things that the CEO is looking for from a marketer is growth, profitable growth, right? And one of those ways that you can achieve profitable growth is through a brand new campaign idea in some way, shape, or form that can produce it. But is it the right thing? Is it the right part of your tool belt to pull out when you're new, when you've been there for 12, 18 months, right? What you're talking about is that's all very well and good, focus on the 4 Ps, but take a look at what decisions the board, the C-suite are making, look at the problems that they're facing, and what can you as the marketer, with all the tools in your tool belt, do to help solve those problems, but only focus on the big ones. If there's one, focus on that one. If there's likely to be more than one, there's 3, probably don't go past 3, but then see how that overlaps with the problems that your customers are trying to solve, which ties back to marketing or marketers needing to worry less about the brochures and the events. Of course, those are things that you need to do, but how are you really going to move the needle? How are you really going to find and expand on that value creation zone if you don't know what your customers' problems are and how to solve them, and what your C-suite's problems are and how to solve them, and to find which ones align and how to solve them through marketing? That's what I really took away from that piece. And there's a great case study that you spoke about in that book, was the mention of Dee Dutter, who was the UK telephone provider One-to-One. He was the person to introduce the pay-as-you-go model on mobile phones. And as one of the first customers in the UK on the one-to-one network using pay-as-you-go specifically. I used to work in a mobile phone shop and I was there when it launched. Hearing about this case study, and I want you to tell us about it, hearing about this case study, I thought, that is a great, great example of that, how D-Dutta was able to identify what were the problems of the customer, what were the big issues that the C-suite were trying to solve, and how could he cater to both through an innovative, creative way of going to market and solving everyone's needs. And hey, one-to-one later got bought out by T-Mobile. I'm sure D-Dutta did pretty well after that.
That's right. Yeah, it is indeed an incredible story. And I got to know Dee quite well. In fact, he was one of my clients when I was a partner at McKinsey. Unfortunately, Dee passed away not long ago. But indeed, you exactly describe how someone finds a big issue and then solves it. Again, we're now talking B2C because that's what the case is. The principles are exactly the same. Yeah, because Dee was a son of Indian immigrants, and he had a lot of people who couldn't afford at the time, right? I mean, most of you weren't born, but at the time when you want to have a mobile phone, that was really expensive. You had to have a good credit history because the whole idea was you're going to get a phone, make a lot of calls, and then at the end of the month, you pay your bill. So you were a risk to the telecoms provider. That's why you wouldn't only really give phones to people who had some good credit record. And unsurprisingly, many people who emigrated to the UK perhaps didn't have that history. So that was the pressure point he saw. But the proposal that he initially made, because when he said, how about we charge them just for a call, was actually, from an engineering perspective, kind of an impossibility, because you would needed a billing system that would immediately, as you make a call and not like a week later, calculate how much it is and then just put it on some account. That wasn't how the systems were working. It was all like, wait, and then we'll let the server run. And then so that obviously was a big stopping point. And then all these it's not going to make us money, and they're the wrong people, and they won't make our phone calls, and the whole debate. But he initially, that wasn't a value equation, because he saw a customer need, but people in the company didn't think that was a really good idea. So he had to work his way through all the concerns. He had to work with the engineers, he had to work with finance to do models, because obviously poor people won't make many phone calls. That was the idea. Turned out in the end, that was not true at all, and they were hugely profitable. But it took him quite a while to actually have that discussion. But that's the point. It's like marketing to consumers. If you're sure the idea can work, you got to work your way through and got to work with the people, make the case and get them involved and fight it all out. And this is sometimes taking a little while. Yuki Yamaguchi and her idea of customer interviews took half a year. That was reasonably fast. The PlayStation took 10. D-Dutta took about 1.5 to 2 years. So sometimes these things take time. But he was very strategic about involving people on the board. So that's the backstory story. And I'm sure when you look at your companies, people who are listening to this today, I'm sure you know one or two things that your customers would really want, and perhaps the company doesn't see yet. And the question is, how can you make that case? And don't expect this to go within a day. Yeah, this is a marathon.
The thing I like about the two different examples that you give, right? So the PlayStation example versus the pay-as-you-go example. Bearing in mind, pay-as-you-go was not a thing before D-Dutta, right? Pay-as-you-go did not exist. D-Dutta was the person to bring topping up your mobile phones with credit to the world, right? So I just wanted to make that clear. But the really nice thing between the two different stories that you speak about, Sony PlayStation, Sony was not in the gaming sector before the PlayStation happened to the extent of gaming consoles. They may have created some small games maybe on some of the devices that they had or what have you, but that was completely brand new territory for them. With one-to-one, now known as T-Mobile, or was acquired by T-Mobile, they had the infrastructure, even though at an engineering standpoint, it was not able to be done. It was not physically able at that stage. But the point is that they had existing infrastructure. And what I really like about that example is that, well, we know that people want, and I don't want to put words into D. Dutter's mouth. And you mentioned before that, he identified as part of the value creation zone that it was something that customers would have wanted, but not so much was it solving a real problem within the C-suite. I challenge, based on something that you said earlier with regards to, well, why are marketers brought on? What do CEOs want from marketers? Well, they want profitable growth. And what D. Dutter was able to do was he was able to take something that was an existing infrastructure, flip it on its head in an area that they already played, not starting new territory per se, like the Sony PlayStation, but was able to innovate on the existing infrastructure and provide that profitable growth at every stage, swept up customers that weren't able to get that credit check approved as part of going onto a contract mobile phone, and just took the world by storm. And sure, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be built in a day, but it's about identifying what those little things are, and you can do it with your existing infrastructure if you speak to your customers, right? If marketers, as you said, one of your points is if marketers are not speaking to their customers and feeling like they know what it is that they say, what it is that's happening on the streets, down at grassroots level, then it's going to be very difficult for you to find those innovative solutions where it's just a slight tweak.
No, I think it is well summarized. That's exactly what happened. Actually, many of those breakthrough ideas started with a leader sitting down somewhere with someone and trying to figure this out, or observing someone doing something. It really comes from big data. It really comes from small data like the one you just described.
Do you think the D. Dutter example could have benefited from AI?
So we spoke about this in our previous conversation, right? When we were thinking about the day today. So I've asked AI, and I got quite interesting answers. By the way, people always say AI, and what they really mean is ChatGPT. I at least asked two. I also asked Gemini, explained the case and said, would you have come up with it? And ChatGPT gave a very interesting answer, suggesting probably not. It would have probably improved tweaks to the existing post-pay system, as in smaller amounts, or make it better. Gemini was more straightforward, and actually it said something that I found quite incredible, because it basically said that it doesn't feel the same pain that maybe someone who is trying to solve a problem has been feeling. And therefore, it cannot react to this response. It can only very logically look at things. It cannot do this emotionally. And this is very interesting because both cases, in fact, of the PlayStation, but also of the PSGO, where there were leaders who felt the pain of consumers. I mean, in one case, they couldn't make phone calls. In the other case, people love to play games and there wasn't enough out there. So I think AI would have helped perhaps with, I'm sure, along the way and trying to figure stuff out. But the real idea, the current systems would probably not have come up with that. Future system might well do. And there is lots of evidence, and we can talk more about creativity and AI because there are some interesting insights and cases. But yeah, so it needed D. Dutter or Ken Kudragi for both.
So, what's really interesting is when you said that, did you say that you used Google Gemini as well as ChatGPT to ask the question, would you have come up with?
Yeah. I was about to try a third one, but I said, well, 2 was probably good enough for this one.
Yeah. No, that's fine. The 2 mainstream ones. What's really interesting is Gemini's response. When you were giving me Gemini's response, which was probably not because I wouldn't have been able to feel the pain. When you said that, the frustration. When you said that, my mind went to the pain of having to figure something out internally. Whereas what Gemini is talking about, as you say, is the frustration of the customer. And I thought that was really, really interesting. I think both are fantastic thoughts, by the way, Because you're absolutely right. Feeling the frustration on behalf of the customer is part of what these innovators do, these marketing innovators do. But then at the same time, we get, as marketers, we have this immense pressure, this constant not wanting to be a cost to the business, because one of the first things that can get cut when things aren't going so well is marketing, if it's not generating any growth. And so things like that on a day-to-day from a marketing leader standpoint, can AI in its current system be stress tested to the point where humans are stress tested to really, really grind out some ideas? Pressure makes diamonds, as they say. And so I just thought that was really interesting. Anything to any threads to pull on as I sort of I'm spitballing now. So
yeah, no, it's pretty cool.
Save me, Thomas. Save me
no,
from my thoughts.
No, look, AI is confusing and there's a lot going on. I think what we can summarize at this stage is that the AI models, when it comes to new things, I'm not talking old things, because I believe they will play a massive role in figuring out returns. And I think it's going to be a huge game changer in the industry. Let's come back to that. But let's stick with creativity for a second. Right now, AI creativity is what I would call fast average. So if you want average creative ideas, you get those. And there are great examples. Boston Consulting did a great study. They asked two teams. One was using chat. The other one wasn't, to solve two problems. The first one was an innovation problem, right? Invent new shoes. And a claim and the ad and the price and everything. So unsurprisingly, the chat GPT group won this because they were faster, created more things, and the ad and claims and everything was good. So yes, it could do that. It wasn't a hugely complicated job, but it was one of you need a lot of stuff to do. The second challenge was a business problem. Here's an issue: a company's losing money. Which brands to focus on? Here are customer interviews. Here's data. They looked at what happened, and in the end, the ChatGPT group lost this. And the reason is that the system wasn't able, as much as the other group was able, to ask some very edgy questions, to look at the tangents, to make judgments, not just based on data, but also based on how people felt something was going, or some previous experiences they had. So in the end, what happened is that for the business problem, ChatGPT wasn't at this stage the winning system. And also, throughout both studies, creativity of the AI team was about 40% lower than of the other team. And it comes to the same thing. It's average fast creativity. If that's what you need, it's great. First draft of something, awesome. Quick, or like sort these 5 things and make them, or figure out A/B tests. That's all wonderful. But these are simpler tasks than pure creative tasks. So I think when it comes to real deep creativity, game-changing innovations, fundamentally, and trying to figure out what's going on in the market, you're going to need your intuition and sitting down with customers, and will beat every AI system in terms of the ideas. When it comes to execution, AI might be just wonderful in terms of help.
So, I think you've pretty much just answered the efficiency of AI, bringing that to marketers. Marketers are ultimately going to get all this time back. Something that you said on one of the first times we spoke is AI is coming whether you like it or not. It's already here. You're going to become enabled. Whether you're scared, whether you're excited about it, it's going to happen, right? It's already happening.
Yeah, and that's because, just to be clear, it is because all the companies whose tools you're using, they'll push this into those tools. So that's the thing, right? So and the phones will come next and so on. It's a bit like the mobile phone. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be there, and then you can decide if you use that free time to take sushi photos or do something useful. But there's something important here. I think I don't forget that, because one of the biggest challenges we have, and that's a pretty big challenge specifically in B2B, is measuring returns. And it's been the issue has been as old as marketing, and we've always debated like what does it take? What does it take? Well, there are 2 issues here, or 3 issues. There are 2 issues. The first one is this is always hard to measure, because marketing is nothing but a massive A/B test, because this budget that
It is.
region, red or yellow, Facebook or TikTok, and you just figure this out and see, oh, that's a response. Interesting. So it's A/B test, A/B, A/B, A/B. And the best marketers in the world, they've done a lot of A/B testing across the entire map of everything that's possible for price up versus Facebook versus yellow ads. It's monstrous. I mean, if you think about the variables you have to use. Now, so it's complicated. However, marketers over the years have also done a terrible job learning what we know. If you go into medicine and say you look at cancer treatment, and if there is one new way of doing this, there will be studies, and then everybody will look at it, and then people start to adopt this. There will be guidelines issued, across the world, and there is a new standard. Different countries may have tweaks, but there is always these standards. In marketing, everybody who comes in appears to reinvent this completely from scratch. Like, oh, how about we do this? And very few people have, oh, well, we've done this. Like, here's the 10 years of data, la, la, la. We don't work this way. So that's sloppy, but that's a reality. And it happened many times. Now, I think one of the things AI can help do, to be positive again, is fix that. Because AI has always, as you know, is really, really good at looking at a lot of data and trying to figure out what they mean. Now, just imagine returns tracking, everything you learn, all the data, everything you generate can go into that little pot, and the system will help you make these decisions. Have a conversation with finance, have a conversation with your boss, say what you don't know. I think it could be a complete game changer, and it will take an issue away that has been very big. I don't think we're there yet, but the models I see now are fascinating, and they take a lot of the ambivalence out. There's still enough not to learn, but it will help us fix the basics. Because as I told you, for example, we have a global digital overspend. We're talking billions that are currently wasted. That's at least what the American Association of Advertisers says, because it's just not controlled. And people just do it because it's also easier. In all fairness, digital is a little easier than just doing a TV ad, which is really difficult, or doing like a road show, or it's just harder. But so I think that's going to be a game changer for marketers, and I look forward to that. For creativity, you're still on your own.
Just a small point to drop in here is a recent report that I saw through System 1 and the IPA out of the UK, the Advertising Standards Practitioners of Advertising. Yep, they recently released a report around creativity and consistency of that creativity, or at least consistency of those key markers, right? So it actually says that when a marketing team fires an agency too early on, or if at all, and changes their whole entire creative, they not only miss out on revenue dollars, but they actually go backwards. They go backwards, and they miss out on the compounding nature of the consistency of creativity. And I know this is somewhat ad-libbing and off script here, but it almost seems pertinent to mention in terms of AI could potentially help with the consistency of your creative, but the creative itself, not so much.
Yeah. And by the way, case in point, how new is the insight that changing creativity over time is a really bad idea? We knew this since 100 years? Why? So it's great that there's a new report coming out that says it again, but why on earth didn't we because we know that.
Why have we forgotten?
Yeah. I like the report. It's great, and we should have it.
Yeah.
Or, for example, that clarity and relevance of message is hugely important. You could spend a lot of money on an irrelevant message. You won't buy your market share. Or that if the clarity and the message are very good, if you then add really interesting creative, that is, of course, you will have much higher efficiency. Again, there is no news in this. We knew this since we started marketing, but it seems to be forgotten all the time. So yes, I think AI systems can help bring this discipline Yeah, that and of course, then these wonderful reports, and they're great, and these are fantastic sources, by the way, and people should read that. Yeah, but what if there was an institutional memory that would memorize this, and next time you're trying to get this wrong, it says, "Well, did you think about this?" Right? So yeah, it's discipline.
Or just not let it escape the brains of marketers and marketers that are not yet born, right? Is that it's just built in. The consistency factor. Don't fire your agent.
By the way, you can change agency and still be consistent, but that's another story.
Of course,
But
of course.
it's more
I'm
like,
being, I'm
as a consumer, you don't care who the agency is. You care what you
No.
see, and if that keeps changing, it's confusing.
Of course, yeah. I was being flippant with that point, but
Of course,
yes,
no,
absolutely.
it's okay.
Yeah. Thomas, this has been an insightful conversation. Thank you so much. We're almost at time. I have got a tradition to share with you that at the end, towards the end of every episode that we do, I ask 4 rapid fire questions. Everyone gets asked these questions, and they ultimately go into a nice little locked drawer for safekeeping. And so my rapid fire questions for you are: what is one resource, book, blog, podcast, talk that fundamentally changed the way you work or live? So one thing that you can pick out?
I love Seth Godin's blog and also podcast, but the blog, in fact, because he writes every single day, which means they're good and bad things, and sometimes they're terrible and sometimes they're awesome. And seeing someone putting their ideas out every single day is remarkable.
That's a great answer. Do you know Seth?
Well, he was very helpful with the 12 Powers of a Marketing Leader. So he was one of the endorsers of the book, and he helped me with this. And that's and I asked him for advice a couple of times. I like what he does.
Do you think he'd be interested in coming onto this podcast?
Only one way to find out.
I'm putting you on the spot.
He does a lot of these, so I think he's quite used to that.
He might be interested. Okay. Rapid fire question number 2. If you could give only one piece of advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
Learn marketing leadership. And it's not because I'm running the Marketing Leadership Masterclass and you're most welcome to sign up. It's not that. The reason is your work is extremely important. B2B is bigger in marketing than B2C. You deserve a seat at the table. You may not have that. So find a way to claim it.
Fantastic. Who are the influencers that you follow in the marketing space, aside from Mr. Godin?
So I follow around 350 chief marketing officers. Many of them I know from the classes that I teach because I'm interested in their views, because I know those are the people who do the work. So that's a big group, and I try to spread that. And I do read, of course, the top marketing publications in the US and also in the UK. I found quite helpful to see what's going on.
So last rapid fire question for you, Thomas, and then I'll let you have your evening. What's something that excites you about B2B today?
It is the biggest place in marketing in the world. It's bigger than B2C. If you have an influence in B2B marketing, typically the influence is quite large because these are large scale contracts. Often these are big long-term investments. And the quality of the work I see in a couple of B2B companies is truly exciting because it is much harder to influence 300 large accounts with all their stakeholders than, say, sometimes putting something on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram to get someone to buy a bottle of milk. I find this fascinating, and I think we need to get this out into the world more because there's great work that needs to be seen.
Great points, great insights. Thomas, you're currently in Tokyo. You'll be there for a while, for a bit. Rumor has it that you're going to be in Australia soon.
That's right. I'll be in Australia next year, July, and then also New Zealand. We're doing a tour with a couple of events about for marketers. There's a new piece on how you become a growth rebel, which is taking to the next level the basics of marketing leadership. And I really look forward to meeting many of you there.
Fantastic. Are there any confirmed details of any of the events that you will be at this stage? Is there anything that you can share?
I can share. No, I can absolutely share that already. I can definitely share the events in New Zealand because they're all fixed. So if you are in this region and you want to take a flight, so I'll be in Australia July 21st, 25th. We're running also the Asia Pacific Marketing Academy Fellowship there. So if you're a chief marketing officer at a top firm, you're most welcome to apply. And then the week 28th of July until August 1st, run 3 large events in New Zealand. And there'll be more news soon when exactly they will happen. But if you follow the New Zealand Marketing Association, you will see when they are. And I look forward to seeing many of you.
That's fantastic. Thomas, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. Always a pleasure. And I look forward to our next discussion and seeing what more I can learn from you.
Vinnie, take care. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Liza Maywald and Alexander Hipwell. It was edited by Dave Samito with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Liza and Alexander. Special thanks to Tina Wabe, we couldn't make this show without you. This episode was hosted by Vinnie Romano. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to know more about Growth Colony, check out our newsletter and subscribe with the link in the pod description. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just interested in a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. Or fill out the form in the description. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week right here on Growth Colony.